Captain Jake Morrison stared at the view screen as his ship moved through the dark space near Kepler 442. The energy readings made no sense. His navigator, Lisa Hayes, checked the instruments again and shook her head. The signals were coming from empty space, but the readings showed massive structures that should not exist. "Ben, what do you think?" Jake asked his chief engineer, Ben Parker. The young man studied his screens and frowned. The energy signatures were unlike anything in their databases. They pulsed with a rhythm that seemed almost alive. "Captain, I think we found something big," Ben said. His voice carried excitement and worry. Dr. Amanda Stone, their xenoarchaeologist, moved closer to the main display. Her eyes widened as the ship's sensors painted a clearer picture of what waited ahead. Massive structures floated in the void. They were not ships or natural formations. These were space stations, but unlike any known design. The smallest was larger than Earth's moon. The largest stretched for thousands of kilometers. Their surfaces were dark and scarred by countless years in space. "How old are these?" Jake asked. Amanda studied the scans and ran calculations. The metal showed decay patterns that suggested millions of years. The designs were complex beyond current understanding. Whoever built these had technology far ahead of any known species. "These predate every civilization in our records," Amanda said. Her team included Ryan Cooper, a skilled technician, and Maria Santos, their best linguist. Both looked amazed at the ancient structures. Jake ordered the ship closer. As they approached, details became clear. The stations had docking bays, designed for ships much larger than anything humans had ever built. Strange symbols covered the hull surfaces. The metal itself seemed to shimmer with buried power. Across the galaxy, Admiral Kexthon commanded the Zephyrian war fleet. His species had conquered dozens of worlds over the past century. They believed themselves the rightful rulers of all space. The Zephyrians were tall, scaled beings with 4 arms and minds focused on conquest. "Report on the human colonies," Kexthon ordered his aide. The humans were useful workers, but nothing more. They had been easy to conquer when the Zephyrians first found their small blue world called Earth. Humans were creative and hardworking, but they lacked the warrior spirit that made the Zephyrians great. On Earth, Dan Miller hid in the ruins of what once was New York City. The Zephyrians had moved most humans into work camps, but some still lived in the destroyed cities. Dan led a small resistance group that helped people survive under alien rule. His daughter Katie Miller was only 12, but she already showed the courage that kept humans alive in dark times. The resistance had little hope of defeating their conquerors. The Zephyrians had better weapons, faster ships, and seemed to view humans as barely intelligent animals. Dan spent his nights planning small strikes against supply convoys, while wondering if humanity would ever be free again. Back at the ancient stations, Jake's team prepared to board the largest structure. They wore environmental suits and carried basic tools. The docking bay they chose was massive enough to hold a dozen ships their size. As their shuttle approached, lights began to flicker on inside the station. "The station is responding to us," Lisa said with surprise. Her instruments showed power flowing through systems that should have been dead for eons. The docking bay opened. Like a great mouth, and mechanical arms guided their shuttle to a safe landing. The team stepped onto the station floor and immediately noticed something strange. The gravity felt exactly like Earth normal. The air, when they tested it, was breathable. The corridors were sized for beings roughly human height. Everything seemed designed for creatures very much like themselves. Amanda led the exploration team deeper into the station. The walls were covered with symbols that hurt to look at directly. They seemed to shift and change when viewed from different angles. Maria began recording everything, hoping to find patterns that might help with translation. Ryan discovered that many of the station's systems were still functional. When he approached control panels, they lit up as if recognizing him. The technology was far advanced but somehow familiar. His engineering training told him how things should work, and they did. "This is impossible," Ryan said as he activated a holographic display. The images showed star maps of the entire galaxy, with thousands of marked locations. Each mark seemed to represent another station like this one. Meanwhile, in Zephyrian space, a young scientist named Veltar studied artifacts taken from Earth during the conquest. Her job was to catalog primitive human tools and art. Most items were simple, as expected from such a backward species. But some pieces troubled her. She found mathematical proofs carved into stone tablets that were more advanced than current Zephyrian science. Human artwork showed understanding of physics and astronomy that should have been impossible for their supposed level of development. When she tried to report these findings, her superiors dismissed them as mistakes or coincidences. Back on the ancient station, Amanda's team made their biggest discovery yet. In the central chamber, they found a massive computer core that still held data. The information was fragmented and damaged by time, but recoverable portions spoke of a great civilization that once connected the entire galaxy. The records called this civilization the Builders. They had created a network of stations, beacons, and hidden facilities across thousands of star systems. Their technology had made interstellar travel as easy as walking between rooms. For millions of years, they had maintained peace and prosperity throughout known space. Then something had happened. The records were unclear about details, but spoke of a great disaster that forced the Builders to abandon everything. They had retreated to their homeworld and vanished from history. The stations were left behind as monuments to their lost greatness. Jake studied the star maps Ryan had discovered. The network of stations created a pattern that covered the galaxy. If the records were accurate, there were thousands of these facilities waiting to be found. Each one might hold more answers about who the Builders were and what had happened to them. As night fell on Earth, Carl Washington sat in his hidden archive beneath the ruins of the Library of Congress. He was one of the few humans who still remembered the old stories and legends, tales of lost civilizations and golden ages that seemed too fantastic to be real. But as he studied ancient human texts by lamplight, he wondered if those stories might be more than myths. The discovery near Kepler 442 would change everything, though the explorers did not yet understand how. The ancient stations held secrets that would shake the foundations of galactic civilization, and at the center of those secrets was a truth about humanity that no one, not even humans themselves, could have imagined. Dr. Amanda Stone worked day and night to unlock the secrets hidden in the ancient station's databanks. The computer systems were incredibly complex, but they responded to human touch in ways that amazed her team. Ryan Cooper had discovered that placing his hand on certain panels caused entire sections to activate. "Look at this," Maria Santos called from her translation station. She had been working with the strange symbols found throughout the facility. The writing was unlike anything in known databases, yet patterns were beginning to emerge. Some symbols appeared in sequences that reminded her of human mathematical concepts. The breakthrough came when Maria realized the symbols were not just writing, but also mathematical formulas. The Builders had combined language and science into a single system. Once she understood this principle, translation became easier. The first complete sentence she decoded made her hands shake. "The children of Earth shall return when the galaxy needs them most," she read aloud. The words sent chills through the entire team. Earth was humanity's homeworld, but how could these ancient beings have known about it millions of years before humans developed space travel? Lisa Hayes made her own disturbing discovery while studying the station's navigation systems. The star charts were incredibly detailed and accurate, showing stellar positions across millions of years. But the navigation principles used were identical to human methods. The mathematical relationships and plotting techniques were exactly what human pilots learned in training. "This cannot be coincidence," Lisa told Jake. She showed him chart after chart that used human navigation concepts. The Builders had plotted courses using the same three-dimensional thinking that came naturally to human minds. Other species used different approaches to space navigation, but this ancient race had thought exactly like humans. Ben Parker spent his time in the engineering sections, trying to understand how the station's power systems worked. The technology was far more advanced than anything humans had created, but the underlying principles felt familiar. When he studied the fusion reactors, he instinctively understood how to optimize their output. Even more strange was how the station seemed to recognize him. Control panels would activate when he approached. Safety systems that should have prevented access to dangerous areas allowed him to pass freely. The station treated all the human crew members like authorized personnel. Meanwhile, in Zephyrian space, Veltar continued her research into human artifacts despite orders to stop. She had convinced a few fellow scientists to help her in secret. What they found challenged everything the Zephyrians believed about human intelligence and capability. Hidden in what appeared to be primitive human art were complex scientific theories. Stone carvings from Earth contained mathematical proofs that Zephyrian science had only recently discovered. Human music, when analyzed properly, showed understanding of harmonic principles that related to advanced physics. Most disturbing were the genetic samples taken during the conquest of Earth. Human DNA contained markers that suggested genetic engineering far more sophisticated than current Zephyrian technology. Someone or something had modified human genetics in the distant past, but the techniques used were beyond current scientific understanding. Minister Hakron, you must see this evidence, Veltar pleaded with her superior. The older Zephyrian listened with growing anger as she presented her findings. The idea that humans might be more than simple workers threatened everything their society believed. Enough of this nonsense, Hakron declared. Humans are primitive creatures, suitable only for labor. Your research is clearly flawed. Destroy all records of this work and return to approved studies. But Veltar could not ignore what she had discovered. She secretly copied her research and continued working with a small group of scientists who shared her curiosity. They began to suspect that human conquest had been far too easy. A species with such hidden complexity should have been much harder to defeat. On Earth, the resistance movement was growing stronger. Dan Miller had made contact with cells in other cities and found that humans everywhere were beginning to remember things they should not know. Workers in the Zephyrian factories were instinctively improving alien technology. Farmers were growing crops using techniques that nobody had taught them. Something is changing, Dan told his lieutenant Steve Adams. People are having dreams about technologies that do not exist. Children are drawing pictures of star maps they have never seen. It is like humanity is remembering something we forgot long ago. Carl Washington had noticed the same pattern in his historical research. Ancient human legends spoke of a time when their ancestors had traveled among the stars and ruled a great empire. Most scholars had dismissed these stories as fantasy, but recent events made them seem more like suppressed memories. Back on the ancient station, Amanda's team made their most important discovery yet. Deep in the central computer core, they found personal logs left by individual builders. These records were more detailed and emotional than the official historical documents. Today we made the hardest decision in our species' history. One log began. Maria translated slowly, making sure she understood every word. The great disaster approaches and cannot be stopped. We have chosen to sacrifice our empire to save all life in the galaxy. Another log was even more revealing. The genetic modifications are complete. Our children will not remember who they were, but they will retain the capacity to rebuild when the time is right. Earth will be their sanctuary until the galaxy needs them again. The pieces began fitting together in a pattern that none of the human crew wanted to believe. The star charts that used human navigation methods, the technology that responded to human touch, the genetic markers that suggested ancient engineering, the legends of a lost golden age. Are you thinking what I am thinking? Jake asked Amanda as they stood before the main computer display. The evidence pointed to an impossible conclusion. Humanity was not a young species struggling to reach the stars. They were the descendants of the galaxy's most advanced civilization. Amanda nodded slowly. The builders were human. Earth was the center of their empire. Something forced them to give up everything and start over as primitives. But they left these stations as guideposts for when their descendants were ready to reclaim their heritage. Lisa ran new calculations based on this theory. If humans were the builders' descendants, then the timing worked perfectly. The great disaster mentioned in the logs had occurred roughly when human civilization began developing rapidly on Earth. The Renaissance, the Industrial Revolution, The space age, all could be explained as genetic memories slowly reawakening. Ryan tested the theory by accessing deeper levels of the station's systems. When he placed both hands on the central control panel and thought about home, the entire station responded. Lights blazed throughout the facility. Power flowed to sections that had been dark for eons. The ancient ship came alive around them. On Earth, similar awakenings were beginning. In hidden bunkers beneath major cities, ancient systems were activating, in response to humanity's growing awareness. Technology that had slept for millions of years was stirring to life. The planet that Zephyrians thought was a conquered world was actually the sleeping homeworld of the galaxy's most powerful civilization. Veltar detected the energy signatures from her laboratory and realized that something momentous was happening. Her research had suggested human potential, but these readings indicated power beyond anything she had imagined. The species her people had enslaved was not what they appeared to be. Admiral Kexthan received reports of strange energy patterns throughout Zephyrian space. The readings seemed to center on systems containing human populations. His military advisors suggested investigating, but the Admiral dismissed the reports. Humans were too primitive to generate such readings. It was a mistake that would cost the Zephyrian Empire everything they had built through conquest and terror. The ancient network was awakening, and with it, humanity was beginning to remember who they really were. Captain Jake Morrison's ship discovered 3 more ancient stations in the following weeks. Each facility was identical in design but served different purposes. One was clearly a research center filled with laboratories that still contained active experiments. Another appeared to be a communication hub with transmitters powerful enough to reach across the galaxy. The third was obviously military, containing weapon systems that made current technology look like stone tools. The pattern is clear now, Amanda Stone reported to Jake as they stood in the command center of the research station. These facilities form a network that once connected the entire galaxy. The builders created an infrastructure that allowed instant communication and travel between any 2 points in known space. Ben Parker had been studying the technology in all 4 stations. The engineering principles were consistent across millions of years and thousands of light years. More importantly, every system recognized human biometric signatures as authorized command codes. The stations had been built by humans for humans, then abandoned and forgotten. "Jake, you need to see this," Ryan Cooper called from the military station's weapon control center. When the captain arrived, Ryan showed him displays that made his blood run cold. The weapons were powerful enough to destroy entire star systems. The defensive shields could protect whole planets. This was not just advanced technology. It was the power to rule or destroy a galaxy. Maria Santos made the most disturbing discovery in the communication station's databanks. She found records of the final transmissions sent by the builder civilization. The messages painted a picture of a species facing an impossible choice between saving themselves and saving everyone else. A cosmic disaster was approaching, Maria translated from the ancient records. Something called the Great Silence was spreading across the galaxy, destroying all advanced technology and civilization. The builders realized they could stop it, but only by sacrificing their empire and their memories. The records described a desperate plan. The builders would use their most advanced technology to create a protective field around the galaxy, but the effort would drain all power from their civilization. To ensure their species survived, they would retreat to Earth and use genetic engineering to make themselves primitive. Their descendants would rebuild slowly, naturally, without the technology that the Great Silence could destroy. Lisa Hayes studied the stellar mechanics data and realized the cosmic disaster had been real. Evidence of the Great Silence was still visible in the galaxy's structure. Entire regions showed signs of technological collapse that occurred exactly when the builder records indicated. Something had indeed tried to destroy all advanced life, and humanity's ancestors had stopped it. Meanwhile, on Earth, the awakening was accelerating. Dan Miller found himself knowing things he had never learned. When Zephyrian equipment broke down, he could fix it instinctively. Other humans reported similar experiences. Factory workers were improving alien designs without understanding how they knew what to do. "It feels like remembering a dream," explained Katie Miller when her father asked about her new abilities. The 12-year-old had started drawing detailed pictures of star charts and technological designs. When Zephyrian scientists saw her drawings, they were amazed by their accuracy and complexity. Carl Washington discovered that human libraries contained far more information than anyone had realized. Books that seemed to contain only stories and legends actually held scientific and technical knowledge, encoded in symbolic language. The myths and fairy tales were actually instruction manuals written for a future generation that would understand their true meaning. In Zephyrian space, Veltar's research had attracted attention from the highest levels of government. Minister Hakron arrived at her laboratory with military guards, intending to arrest her for spreading dangerous ideas. Instead, he found evidence that terrified him more than any enemy fleet. "Show me what you have discovered," Hakron demanded. Veltar presented her complete analysis of human capabilities, the genetic markers indicating ancient engineering, the instinctive understanding of advanced principles, the dreams and memories that suggested a forgotten past. All the evidence pointed to the same impossible conclusion. "Humans are not primitives," Veltar said quietly. "They are the descendants of the most advanced civilization in galactic history. We did not conquer them because we were superior. We conquered them because they allowed us to. They were sleeping, and we mistook sleep for weakness." Hakron studied the data and felt his world collapsing around him. The Zephyrian Empire was built on the belief that they were the strongest and most intelligent species in the galaxy. If humans were actually superior beings who had simply forgotten their power, then everything was wrong. "How long before they remember everything?" he asked. Veltar checked her calculations and gave him an answer that made his blood freeze. Based on the rate of awakening she was observing, humanity would fully recover their heritage within months, perhaps weeks. Back at the ancient stations, Jake's crew was learning to operate technology that could reshape the galaxy. The communication systems allowed instant contact with other stations throughout space. The research facilities contained scientific knowledge that advanced human understanding by thousands of years. The weapons could protect Earth from any conceivable threat. But with knowledge came responsibility. Amanda Stone found records of the ethical debates that had shaped Builder civilization. These ancient humans had possessed the power to conquer anyone, but they had chosen to protect and guide other species instead. They had been teachers and guardians, not rulers. "We have a choice to make," Jake told his assembled crew. "We can use this power to free humanity and take revenge on those who conquered us. Or we can follow the example of our ancestors and use our strength to protect everyone." The decision became urgent when Ben Parker detected massive energy signatures approaching their position. A Zephyrian war fleet was moving toward Earth at maximum speed. Admiral Kexthon had finally realized that the energy readings from human space represented a genuine threat to his empire. On Earth, the awakening reached a critical point. Hidden facilities beneath every major city came online simultaneously. Ancient defensive systems that had protected the planet for millions of years began powering up. Humans across the world felt knowledge flooding into their minds as genetic locks opened and released suppressed memories. Dan Miller found himself appointed as Earth's military coordinator by systems he did not understand. Information flowed into his mind about orbital defense platforms, hidden weapon systems, and strategic principles that had kept Earth safe throughout the Dark Ages. He understood immediately that humanity was about to be tested. Katie Miller and children like her across the planet became living conduits for ancient knowledge. Their young minds accepted the returning memories more easily than adults. They began teaching their parents about technologies and sciences that human civilization was only beginning to rediscover. Veltar detected the planetary awakening from her laboratory and knew that the time for hiding was over. She sent an emergency message to every Zephyrian commander, warning them that humanity was not what they seemed. Most ignored her warnings or dismissed them as impossible. Admiral Kexathon was different. He had ruled through strength for too long to ignore evidence of superior power. When his sensors detected the energy signatures coming from Earth, He realized that his conquered world had become the most dangerous place in the galaxy. All ships prepare for immediate assault, he ordered his fleet commanders. Whatever is happening on Earth must be destroyed before it spreads to other human colonies. If we act quickly, we can crush this threat before it fully awakens. It was exactly the wrong decision, at exactly the wrong time. Earth's ancient defenses were designed to activate fully when the planet was threatened. By attacking, Kexthan would trigger systems that had waited millions of years for someone to make that mistake. Jake Morrison's crew raced back toward Earth aboard the ancient military station, which they now knew was actually a massive warship. The Guardian systems of the facility had activated and were teaching them how to use weapons that could destroy entire fleets. But they also carried the weight of their ancestors' wisdom about when such power should be used. The galaxy was about to learn why humanity's ancestors had been called builders instead of conquerors. The difference would determine whether the awakening brought peace or war to every inhabited world in space. Dr. Amanda Stone placed her hand on the central command console of the military station, and the ancient facility came fully alive around them. The artificial intelligence that had been dormant for millions of years awakened with a sound like distant thunder. When it spoke, the voice was unmistakably human, though older than recorded history. "Welcome home, children of Earth," the Guardian said. Its words carried weight and sadness that spoke of eons of waiting. "I am Guardian Protocol 7, left here by your ancestors to guide your return when the galaxy needed you most." Jake Morrison stepped forward as captain, though he felt small before such ancient wisdom. "Guardian, we need to understand what happened to our ancestors. Why did they abandon all of this power?" The Guardian's response filled the command center with holographic displays showing the galaxy as it had been millions of years ago. Thousands of civilizations flourished under the protection of humanity's ancestors. Trade routes connected every inhabited system. Art, science, and philosophy advanced at rates that seemed impossible. Your ancestors ruled not through force but through wisdom, the Guardian explained. They were called builders because they created rather than destroyed. They gave younger species the tools to grow, while protecting them from those who would cause harm. But then the displays changed, showing the approach of something that hurt to look at directly. The Great Silence was not a physical phenomenon, but a cosmic infection that destroyed the ability to think and create. It spread from galaxy to galaxy, leaving behind empty space where once great civilizations had thrived. The silence could not be fought with weapons, the Guardian continued. It fed on advanced technology and complex thought. The more sophisticated a civilization, the faster it fell. Your ancestors realized they faced an impossible choice. The holographic display showed the final days of human civilization. Scientists and philosophers debated desperately while the silence crept closer. Some argued for evacuation to distant galaxies. Others wanted to fight despite the hopelessness. But the wisest voices proposed something that seemed like madness. They chose to sacrifice everything to create a barrier that would protect this galaxy from the silence, the Guardian revealed. But such a barrier required the combined mental energy of the most advanced civilization in known history. They would have to give up their technology, their knowledge, even their memories. Amanda Stone felt tears on her face as she understood the magnitude of their ancestors' sacrifice. They saved everyone by making themselves primitive. They protected the galaxy by forgetting they were its guardians. The Guardian confirmed her understanding. They retreated to Earth and used their final technologies to lock away their memories in genetic codes. Their descendants would live as simple beings until the galaxy was safe and ready for their return. The stations were left as guideposts for when that day came. Meanwhile, on Earth, the planetary awakening reached its climax. Hidden facilities that had been buried for millions of years rose from ocean floors and mountain depths. The technology was incredibly advanced but felt natural to human minds, like remembering how to walk after a long illness. Dan Miller found himself in the command center of Earth's primary defense facility, located beneath what had once been the Pacific Ocean. Knowledge flowed into his mind about orbital defense platforms, energy weapons, and protective shields that could guard entire continents. But most importantly, he understood the philosophy behind their use. "We protect everyone," he said to his daughter Katie as she helped him understand the control systems. "Not just humans, everyone. That is what makes us different from conquerors." Across Earth, similar scenes played out in every major city. Humans, who had been slaves and refugees the day before, were becoming the inheritors of the galaxy's most advanced technology. But the knowledge came with the wisdom of ages, teaching them responsibility along with power. Carl Washington discovered that every library on Earth contained hidden sections that activated when approached by awakening humans. Books that had seemed to contain only stories revealed themselves as technical manuals and philosophical treatises. Human culture had preserved the truth in coded form, waiting for the day when it would be needed again. In Zephyrian space, Veltar watched in amazement as her instruments detected the energy signatures of a planetary awakening. The readings were beyond anything in her experience. Earth was not just activating ancient technology, it was becoming the center of a galactic network that spanned millions of light years. "Minister Hakron, you must contact Admiral Kexthan immediately," she pleaded with her superior. "He is leading the fleet toward the homeworld of the galaxy's most advanced civilization. This will not be a conquest. It will be a catastrophe." But Hakaron was too frightened and proud to admit that everything his species believed was wrong. He ordered Veltar's arrest instead of heeding her warnings. As security forces led her away, she managed to send one final message to the Zephyrian fleet, warning them about what they were really attacking. Admiral Kexthan received Veltar's message as his fleet approached the Earth system. His first instinct was to dismiss it as the ravings of a mad scientist. But his tactical officers confirmed that the energy readings from Earth were unlike anything in their databases. "Admiral, the entire planet appears to be one massive military installation," his chief sensor operator reported. "We are detecting weapon systems that dwarf anything in our fleet, defensive capabilities that could protect the entire system, and power sources that suggest technology centuries ahead of our own." Kexthan studied the readings and felt uncertainty for the first time in his military career. But retreat was not in his nature, and his empire's survival depended on destroying this threat before it could spread to other human populations. "All ships to battle stations," he ordered. "Whatever the humans have awakened, we will crush it before it can challenge Zephyrian rule." Back at the ancient station, Jake Morrison and his crew prepared for what they knew would be the defining moment in galactic history. The Guardian had provided them with access to weapons that could destroy fleets, but also with the wisdom to understand when such power should be used. "The choice your ancestors faced is now yours," the Guardian told them. "Will you use this power to rule as conquerors or to protect as guardians?" Ben Parker studied the weapon systems and realized they were designed for defense rather than aggression. "These systems are built to disable, not destroy," he observed. "They could stop an enemy fleet without killing anyone." Lisa Hayes nodded as she examined the navigation and communication systems. "And the network is designed to connect civilizations, not control them. Our ancestors built tools for cooperation, not domination." Ryan Cooper made the most important discovery in the station's memory banks. "Jake, look at this," he called from a data terminal. "There are records of every species the Builders ever encountered. Not conquest records, friendship records. They kept track of everyone they helped, everyone they guided, everyone they protected." Maria Santos found similar records in the cultural databases. The Builders had not just protected other species, they had celebrated their diversity and encouraged their unique contributions to galactic civilization. Humanity's ancestors had been gardeners tending a galaxy full of growing civilizations. As the Zephyrian fleet approached Earth, both sides prepared for a battle that would determine the future of every species in the galaxy. But only one side understood what they were really fighting for. Admiral Kexathan saw a threat to be destroyed. The awakening humans saw a chance to resume their ancient role as protectors and teachers. The Guardian spoke one final time before the battle began. "Remember, children of Earth, true strength lies not in the power to destroy, but in the wisdom to protect. Your ancestors sacrificed everything to give you this choice. Choose wisely. Earth's orbital defenses powered up as the enemy fleet entered the system. Ancient weapons that had guarded the planet through the Dark Ages prepared to fire for the first time in millions of years. But their human operators held the key to whether this would be a massacre or a lesson in the difference between conquest and protection. Captain Jake Morrison and his crew arrived at Earth aboard the ancient warship, just as Admiral Kexthan's fleet entered the system. The Zephyrian ships were impressive by current standards, but they looked like toys compared to the orbital defense platforms that were rising from Earth's oceans and mountain ranges. "Guardian, can we stop them without destroying them?" Jake asked, as he took his place at the command console. The ancient artificial intelligence considered the question with the wisdom of ages. "Your ancestors designed these weapons for protection, not annihilation," the Guardian replied. "Every system can disable rather than destroy. The choice of how to use them remains yours." On Earth's surface, Dan Miller coordinated the planet's defenses from the primary command center. The knowledge flowing into his mind was overwhelming but clear. He understood exactly how to use Earth's ancient weapons to neutralize the Zephyrian fleet without harming the crews. "Target their engines and weapon systems only," he ordered the defense coordinators around the globe. "Disable their ships, but leave life support intact. We are not conquerors seeking revenge. We are guardians protecting our family." The space battle began when Admiral Kexthan ordered his fleet to open fire on what appeared to be empty space around Earth. His weapons struck invisible barriers that absorbed the energy without taking any damage. The planet was protected by shields that had been waiting millions of years for this moment. "Impossible," Kexthan muttered, as his most powerful weapons had no effect. No primitive world could possess such defenses. His sensor operator's voice was tight with fear. "Admiral, we are detecting massive energy buildups throughout the system. The humans are preparing to return fire." Earth's response was swift and precise. Ancient orbital platforms fired beams of energy that passed through the Zephyrian shields as if they did not exist. Instead of destroying the enemy ships, the beams surgically disabled their engines and weapons. Within minutes, the entire fleet was powerless but intact. Jake Morrison moved his ancient warship alongside the Zephyrian flagship and opened a communication channel. When Admiral Kexthan's image appeared on the screen, the Zephyrian commander was shocked to see humans operating, technology that surpassed anything in his empire. "Admiral Kexthan," Jake said calmly, "I am Captain Jake Morrison of the human exploration vessel Starbound. We need to talk." The Admiral's pride warred with his growing understanding that everything had changed. "Impossible. Humans are primitives. You cannot possess such power. We are the descendants of this galaxy's first and greatest civilization," Jake replied. "Our ancestors built the network of stations that once connected every inhabited world in known space. They sacrificed their empire to save all life from a cosmic disaster. Now we have awakened to resume our ancient role." Amanda Stone appeared beside Jake on the transmission. "Admiral, your people have been living in the ruins of our ancestors' civilization. The technology you use, the star charts you follow, even the trade routes between your worlds, all were created by humans millions of years ago." Kexthan felt his worldview crumbling as he processed this information. His species had built their empire by conquering others, always believing they were the superior race. To learn that their primitive slaves were actually the heirs to galactic civilization was almost more than he could accept. On Earth, the awakening reached its final stage. Every human on the planet now had access to the genetic memories of their ancestors. But along with technology and knowledge came wisdom about how to use such power responsibly. Katie Miller stood beside her father in the command center, her young mind fully adapted to the returning memories. "Dad, I can see the whole galaxy," she said with wonder. "Every world, every species, every civilization, we used to protect them all." Carl Washington emerged from his archives with tears of joy on his face. Every legend and myth he had preserved was revealed as historical truth. Humanity's golden age had been real, and it was beginning again. Meanwhile, Veltar was released from custody as the Zephyrian government realized they needed her expertise to understand what was happening. She immediately contacted the human command center on Earth and offered her assistance. "Dr. Stone, This is Veltar, a Zephyrian scientist who has been studying your people, she transmitted. I want to help bridge the gap between our species. Not all Zephyrians supported the conquest of Earth. Amanda Stone smiled as she received the transmission. Veltar, your research helped us understand what was happening to our people. We would welcome your assistance in what comes next. What came next was the most complex challenge humanity had ever faced. Word of Earth's awakening spread quickly throughout the galaxy. Some species welcomed the return of the ancient guardians, remembering legends of the builders who had once protected all life. Others feared that humanity would seek revenge for millennia of being ignored or conquered. Jake Morrison found himself appointed as Earth's first ambassador to the galactic community. His mission was to convince other species that humanity's return would benefit everyone, not just humans. He began by releasing Zephyrian prisoners and offering medical aid to their damaged fleet. We could destroy your ships and leave you stranded, he told Admiral Kexathan during their second meeting. Instead, we offer you repairs and safe passage home. This is the difference between conquerors and guardians. The Admiral was struggling to understand this new reality. Why show mercy to those who enslaved your people? Because our ancestors taught us that true strength comes from lifting others up, not beating them down, Jake replied. Your people were wrong to conquer Earth, but we will not compound that wrong with revenge. Dan Miller coordinated the liberation of human colonies throughout Zephyrian space, but instead of simply freeing the captive populations, he offered Zephyrian worlds assistance with problems they had been unable to solve. Human technology began improving life for all species, just as it had millions of years ago. The greatest test came when other aggressive species decided to attack while they thought humanity was distracted by the Zephyrian situation. 3 different empires launched simultaneous assaults on human colonies, expecting easy victories over scattered populations. They discovered instead that every human world was now connected to the ancient defense network. Ships that attacked human colonies found themselves facing the same precise non-lethal response that had disabled the Zephyrian fleet. The attackers were left powerless but alive, forced to confront the reality that humanity was no longer defenseless. Katie. Miller proposed the solution that defined humanity's new role in the galaxy. We should invite everyone to join the network, she suggested during a planning session with her father and the other coordinators. Not as subjects, but as partners. The way our ancestors intended. The idea was radical but compelling. Instead of ruling the galaxy through superior force, humanity would share their ancient network with any species willing to use it peacefully. Trade, communication, and cooperation would replace conquest and domination. Veltar became the first non-human to join the network, working with Amanda Stone to adapt the ancient systems for Zephyrian minds. Other scientists from various species soon followed, eager to study technology that could benefit all life. Admiral Kexthan faced the most difficult choice of his career. He could return to Zephyrian space and report that humans were dangerous, enemies to be destroyed. Or he could recommend that his people accept humanity's offer of partnership and cooperation. Captain Morrison, he finally said during their last meeting before his departure, my people built an empire through conquest. Your people built one through cooperation. I am beginning to understand which approach creates lasting strength. Jake nodded respectfully. Admiral, your people have great potential. The same courage that made you effective conquerors could make you excellent protectors. We would welcome Zephyrians as partners in rebuilding galactic civilization. The transformation was not immediate or easy. Some species refused to believe that humans were the ancient builders and continued to view them as threats. Others tried to exploit the situation by claiming humanity owed them reparations for past neglect. But slowly, steadily, the galaxy began to change. Human technology improved life on thousands of worlds. The ancient communication network allowed instant contact between civilizations separated by vast distances. Trade flourished as species discovered they could trust each other under humanity's protection. Carl Washington established new libraries on every human world, preserving the histories and cultures of all species they encountered. Knowledge belongs to everyone, he declared as he worked with alien scholars to create the greatest collection of information in galactic history. The story ended where it began, with exploration and discovery. Jake Morrison's ship, now equipped with ancient builder technology, led expeditions to unexplored regions of the galaxy. But instead of claiming new worlds for humanity, they sought out young civilizations that needed guidance and protection. Guardian, Jake asked as they approached a system showing signs of early industrial development, how do we help them without taking away their independence? The ancient artificial intelligence considered the question with the wisdom earned through millions of years of watching civilizations rise and fall.